Uh, Hello, Council Bluffs, Iowa. Say hi to Council Bluffs today. Hello, everyone. My name is AJ Kuftic. I am a product manager here at Expedient. I'm very happy to join you. It's been a while since I've been on the webinar here, but today we are going to talk about the new cloud math. And I know that says math, and people get very anxious and nervous about doing math things. I am a parent. I'm aware of this, but there's no math that you actually have to do. So you can go ahead and put your calculators and notepads away. We'll take care of that. A quick housekeeping note, please enter those Q&As down here into the Q&A panel. That helps me keep track of them. I want this to be interactive. Please ask your questions, ask really any questions you'd like to, more about cloud math or how, people can do cloud maybe a little bit better, or how we can assist you on your cloud journey. Also, all of this is being recorded. So if you have to step away or you want to show this to someone else, or you really want to review the math that was done inside of this presentation, you'll get a link in your email. It'll also be available on our website at go.expedient.com/webinar replay, youtube.com/expedient, twitter.com/expedient, and linkedin.com/company/expedient. By the way, go ahead and like and subscribe and follow us on all of those social media channels to find out what we're up to. We have a lot in store for this year. For those of you who are new to Expedient, we've evolved our services over the last 20 years. We started 20 years ago with a couple data centers doing co-location. Today, we have 14 data centers in 10 cities with more to come. We've released our push button DR platform in 2015 to be able to provide fast network failover and DR as a service to our customers from on-prem to us or between our data centers. In 2018, we released our enterprise cloud to provide a public cloud alternative without all the refactoring to be able to bring your mission critical workloads as is and get you off and running quickly. We also released our cloud native platform in 2020 to power next generation applications on top of our enterprise cloud with fully managed Kubernetes, persistent container storage, and application observability. We released multi-cloud management tools in 2021 around networking and security and cost management to be able to help you manage your workloads regardless of where they live. And in 2021, we released our enterprise workspace to help you work different and provide a secure and consistent user experience. But when we start talking through the overall, cloud journey, we find that a lot of people struggle with it. And that's because we have to take a look at what perspective we're coming at a cloud journey, right? When we think of cloud journey, we've been told over and over again, if we actually go back to the beginning, that you should be moving to the cloud. Everything is going to the cloud. And so everybody said, okay, well, I have this stuff on-prem and I want to put it in the cloud. And so for the first few years, it was, okay, I'm going to pick my workloads up and put them out there. Okay, that's a very expensive way to do that. We all learned together. And when we started thinking about this, it was, how do I save costs? How do I eliminate costs? There was a lot of repatriation, going back to on-prem or figuring out, does this workload really need to live in a cloud? And there was a lot of jumbling back and forth. And then we kind of realized, oh, wait, the right way to go to a cloud is to refactor your applications. Don't go out there until you're ready. And you can do this, very, persistent move out to the cloud of, I have this application and we want to modernize it. And as part of that modernization, we'll land on a cloud. And people started doing that. Kind of ran into some problems there too. And so we're kind of thinking about this potentially in a different way, right? We need to think about the perspective of looking at cloud. What is cloud? What do we want to do with it? And when we think about perspective, my friend Jeffrey the giraffe here, when we change the perspective, turns into Petey the penguin. And when you change the way that you look at a problem, you can come to a very different value. Speaking of values, here's where the math comes in. We need to think about the order of operations and how we actually go about a cloud migration. Now, obviously, there's some math here. And when we think about order of operations, we think about PEMDAS. I don't know how many of you are parents of small children who have had to explain this concept to them, or if you remember it from when you were in school, but PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. The order of operations is important to get to the expected value. If you take 3 times 3 plus 1, and you don't do the order of operations right, you do the addition first, 3 plus 1 is 4, times 3 is 12. But the real answer is 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. Those are very different results, even though the numbers and the operators don't change. The order of operations can get you to the right end point, the right result. And this is something that a lot of organizations struggle with because they're going about the order of operations in the wrong way. When we look back, we see digital transformation started in 2008. It was 14 years ago. Feels like yesterday, right? And when we look at digital transformation starting in 2008, what were we trying to accomplish? We were trying to use digital transformation. We're trying to use technology to benefit our businesses, which is an awesome thing, but never was really well defined. And so a lot of people went out to cloud to just put their stuff in a cloud and say, we've digitally transformed. That's not digital transformation. That's just running your stuff somewhere else. That's fine. We've been doing that forever, right? We're a colo provider. Hi. Right? How do we actually do this better? And if we're looking at digital transformation starting in 2008, and that involves moving to a cloud, you would think that by now we're 100% cloud native, right? Not so much. Turns out that 80% of workloads still live on-prem or still live in co-location. And these are stats not from us or from analysts. This is from Amazon themselves. Amazon came out at reInvent this year and said the actual percentage of workloads running in their environment is sub 15%. Azure and GCP are in the same boat. Think about how big AWS is. Think about how big Amazon is. And if Azure or if AWS only has sub 15% of workloads, it's not like Azure and GCP have the other 15% and there's 45% in the cloud. No, most organizations are not there yet. So if you feel like we're being left behind or our cloud isn't being accelerated enough or we're not getting to where we want to go, don't feel that way. Just know that you're right on track with most of the rest of the people in the industry. In fact, if you look at a global average, 34% of organizations are most in the cloud, only 34%. And if you want to look at all in the cloud or 100% cloud native, you're down to 12% as a global average. And that's buoyed by small businesses. When you look at medium and large organizations, that drops to 30% most in the cloud and 4% all the way in. So there's a lot of organizations running into the exact same struggles you are, and this is where the problems come in. So what is the main problem of why organizations can't get to a cloud? It's technical debt, one of the biggest ones out there. And that's because when you think about technical debt is not something you just show up with. It's not like, oh, hey, I swiped my credit card, I spent $20,000 on a vacation. Now I have $20,000 in debt. It's buying groceries every month for $100. I mean, you can't really buy groceries for $100 a month anymore. That'd be amazing. But if you were paying $100 a month over and over and over again, over time, you're going to build up to that $20,000 and not think about it, right? Obviously, you're paying it back over time, but you can rack up an amount of debt just by making much smaller transactions. And this is what a lot of organizations have. And a study by Google actually found that most technical debt-laden organizations are 1.6 times less productive. Now, that's a lovely thing to put into an article from Forbes. That's a lovely thing to put into your study and have a number to really work off of. But when you think about it, that actually shows up in a very common way. We don't have time for that. Think around all the times that you have talked to, your teams or your clients or your end users, and they're asking for things. And you say, we would love to do that. But we've got so much on our plate right now that we just really can't take the time to go do those things. That's what this is. And this lack of productivity is where the problems start to begin. Because when we actually extrapolate this out into hours of work per week, a tech debt laden organization is going to spend 64 hours per week trying to do the same amount of work that a non-tech debt laden organization can do in 40. That's 24 hours per week. That is 31 weeks of extra work per year to do the same amount. That's problematic. This leads to your employees saying, you know what? It can't be that bad. I mean, the grass is green right over there. I would like to see how green it is. And they want to leave. They go to Indeed.com. They'll do it on the work Wi-Fi. They don't care. And this sort of thing leads to people walking out the door. What happens when people walk out the door? They take the institutional knowledge with them. That's not intellectual property. That's not like lawsuit level, but it's the, hey, Mark knew how to restart this server in the right way post patching to make sure that it works properly. Or Jennifer knew how to write this query to get this piece of data out, but never really showed anybody. Our documentation's not good because we never had any time to write documentation. We would write the thing and then move on to the next task that needed to be done, and documentation was never done. That's another thing that happens as part of technical debt. And so we end up with this entire plan and all of this technology, and then people leave and no one knows what to do with it anymore. That's the biggest problem here. And when you start to add on a cloud migration to the overall structure, it becomes even worse. I now have this 64 hours of work just to do what we do today. And then I add a cloud migration or a cloud journey on top of it. That is instant burnout for all of your employees. And so what if you could get 50% of your time back just by changing the order of operations? Changing the way that you do things and the order in which you do them to accelerate those transformation efforts. And you may be saying, okay, sure, you've got a time machine. It's a DeLorean. They're more readily available than you'd think. And so trying to get these sorts of technologies into the hands of your end users or your admins seems pretty straightforward, right? But most of the time when people start thinking about this transformation effort, they think that they need to rewrite code. And when we start looking at rewriting code or, accelerating our applications and their transformation, we think we have to refactor. What if you didn't have to refactor either? Does that sound interesting? I think it sounds really interesting. I've been through these sorts of these organizational changes. I've been through these migrations. And the first thing that comes up is, okay, who's going to work on this? Well, this team is going to work on it. Or, hey, how long is it going to take us to do this? Oh, we think we can do this in about 18 to 24 months. Spoiler alert, you can't do it in 18 to 24 months. It doesn't work that way. So I want to introduce you to some friends of mine. I want to introduce you to Kip. Kip is the VP of IT at Best Beanies. He's got one of those Best Beanies on his head right now. Pretty cool dude. He started in a development background. He's a senior IT leader now, worked his way all the way up. But from a development background, he is focused on the applications and what the applications need to succeed. And this is a really, really good way to look at things. We want to focus on the applications because that's what the business actually uses. If we actually think about IT infrastructure overall, most organizations don't look at it this way, right? They think about, okay, how much am I paying for my servers and my computer rooms and those sorts of things. He's looking at it from an application standpoint. And he has a really strong belief that they need to go to the cloud. That's a very nebulous term, but he believes that they need to go to the cloud. And he's not wrong, right? But what he sees is one of the sea changes in the industry, which is that moving to the cloud is one of the opportunities to actually make big structural changes to the way that they do things. And that's important because when we think about this, we think about, how many, opportunities we get to do this. We have, we wrote it for the first time to go to a mainframe. Okay. Then we have mainframe to x86. Then we have physical x86 to virtualization. Then we have virtualization to containers. And then we have containers to cloud. And you can flip-flop cloud and containers and so on and so forth, right? But that's 5. And I just went through 30 plus years of computing. So this doesn't come up very often. It comes up once every 5 or 6 years, the ability to make these big structural changes onto technology platforms to be able to do that. And that's on average. It's gotten faster. But as we go forward on this, being able to take advantage of these opportunities is a big deal. So Kip has a great plan, right? Also wanted you to meet my friend Larry. He's the VP of IT at Skylark Floors, the greatest flooring company in the tri-state area. And he comes up from an infrastructure background. He started doing network and server admin and has worked his way up to VP of IT. So he's focused on the infrastructure side of the house because cloud is an infrastructure. And he sees cloud as something that he wants to get to, but he's been in this game for a while and he's seen the struggles of trying to move an application to the cloud. How do we actually go do that thing? And so he looks at this and he says, okay, I want to get to the cloud, But what I really want to do is take this internal data center and send it south, because he's looking at the data center and saying, well, I see an AC upgrade. I see that our UPS needs to be upgraded. Nobody's touched that generator in probably 2 years. That probably needs to be maintained. We've probably got some things that we need to do in terms of roof leaks. And a lot of people built their data centers in like 2005, mid 2000s range before virtualization and said, okay, we need 30,000 square feet because we are growing exponentially and we need to fill this thing with blinking lights and loud fans. And then virtualization came along and said, actually, we're just going to have this other little part over here that has a lot of blinking lights and loud fans. And so they have this 30,000 square foot data center and they're using like 6,000 square feet of it. Oh, look, this data center is only 20% utilized. So you have this big giant room with nothing in it. And it still costs all the money to cool it and power it and make sure that everything is redundant and up to date and taken care of. Trust us, we know we have 14 of them. So when we look at this and when Larry is looking at this, he wants to get to a cloud operating model, not necessarily a cloud. And this is the key difference, because when we look at their plans, they're very different. They're similar, but very different. Kip says, I want to renew my data center lease because I don't want to disrupt everything. My infrastructure is running. I'm not worried about my infrastructure. I'm worried about my applications. So he says, let's keep this data center lease going. Just, okay, great idea. And then he says, let's take our biggest bang for our buck. These are the things that matter. So he's not looking at his accounting system. He's not trying to lift and shift a bunch of VMs that, just run some reports here and there. He's saying, okay, this is my retail website. This is my ordering system that I need to be able to scale to meet the needs. I don't need beanies in the summertime. I need beanies in the wintertime, but people start buying them in September. So we need to scale up. All of that workload and all of that thought process is where he's getting his bang of the scalability and agility of a cloud. And so he selects AWS as his hyperscale cloud. Okay, great. They are a market leader. They've more or less pioneered this. Choosing AWS is not the wrong choice, right? And so he says, I'm also going to listen to all of the analysts and people in my space and the best practices that I've heard over the years. And I'm going to refactor my apps using the AWS native tools, because he's heard over and over again, don't move to EC2. If you move to EC2, you failed. I need to go in and use the native tooling and Lambda and DynamoDB and functions and Kubernetes. And I need to use the native tools, EKS, the tools to actually make this work. And then he takes his existing team, to refactor those apps and do the data migration, then says, you know what, I'll evaluate my next steps after this. So pretty good plan out of the gate. Let's take a look at what Larry does though. Larry says, I need to get out of this data center now. And so he chooses to exit the internal data center as fast as possible. What happens? He now has funding because he's now avoiding or saving the money on replacing that AC, fixing his UPS, fixing his generator. And so now he's able to take that money and put it somewhere else, put it to better use versus just pouring it into the building that he's in. And then he says, okay, we got to get rid of this technical debt. Otherwise, none of this app modernization stuff is going to work. So I need to get out of the way of patching and growth and maintenance and hardware fixes and all this stuff that we need to do to keep the lights on. I need someone else to keep those lights on for me so I can focus on what's best for my business. And then he moves to a VMware-based IaaS platform like Expedient Enterprise Cloud to accelerate that move and take down the risks of the migration, because he doesn't have to change anything. He's running VMware on-prem. He migrates to a VMware-powered cloud. Everybody moves forward. And this is what makes this journey successful for him, because he's thinking about it from an infrastructure standpoint. And so he has a very smooth migration to look forward to. And then he can leverage partners, right? That can do things like, hey, we're going to move your AI Xbox because the person who was running the AI Xbox is enjoying his retirement at this point. And so we need someone else to come in and help us manage that and get that into a co-location space next to the IaaS platform so that all of it works together. And then he will evaluate his next steps based on his learnings. So let's fast forward now, because again, we have a DeLorean, a time machine. We're going to go ahead and fast forward to 5 years from now. And we see that Larry has made this massive jump up front by eliminating the costs of his data center and accelerating a hybrid cloud to lift and optimize, not lift and shift, lift and optimize. He moves into a predictable model. He's able to take things forward and actually push those things to the next level without having to worry about, oh no, this actually is not a great fit, or my network fees are out of control. He can do it in a very particular and considerate manner. And then he takes the rest of his internal IT infrastructure and says, actually, I only needed this much for colo. Great. So I'm going to land these physical things here. And now I have no private data center. I have no internal IT infrastructure. And he's able to drop his cost by about 40% and get that cloud jump that he wanted. Versus Kip, who says, I'm going to maintain that data center lease. Turns out that data center lease is the majority of his costs. And that is a big difference for him. And he slowly but surely starts to modernize his apps. But by year 3, he's only 10% modernized here. And he's now starting to lift and shift into a hyperscale cloud because he has to, because he needs to get away from his data center lease because he doesn't want to renew it again. And eventually he does a full lift and shift and never gets to the full cloud operating model and is still spending the exact same amount that he was spending before. This is the main difference. By being able to take advantage of an enterprise cloud, Larry was able to get to where he needed to go faster so that he can start to modernize his applications. And this isn't a fake story. We actually did this for a client. They were looking at their data center and saying, we really got to get out of here. And in moving out of their data center, we were able to save them $26 million in data center upgrades and hardware costs just by changing the transformation order. They were in the process of doing what Kip was doing. They were modernizing their apps as they went, and they had moved about 20 apps to a hyperscale cloud in 3 years. So 20 apps in 3 years, that's like a 6 to 7 app per year average. Not bad, but not great either, right? Because they had hundreds of apps. It's not like they had 25 apps and they had done most of them. They were 20 on app 20 of 100. We also helped them reclaim 234,000 man hours of effort just by migrating into our environment. That's 3 years of tech debt gone. Now, what would you do if you could reclaim 234,000 man hours of work? Well, in this case, they took their engineers and sent them back to school to learn how to code. And by doing that, they were actually able to accelerate their app transformation efforts. And in the last calendar year, moved 40 apps because they now had more staff to be able to focus on the actual modernization because they didn't have to focus on the infrastructure. We reduced their complexity by bringing everything into one single data center platform. And we accelerated their transformation to a cloud operating model in months. We actually moved their entire environment in 6 months, not years. This is a massive shift for a lot of organizations, and Expedient can make that incredibly easy. We can give you all of the cloud without any of the refactoring. 4 times the cloud, 25% of the effort, and 2/3 of the cost. We look at that 80-20 of on-prem and colo versus hyperscale and say, you know what? 70% of workloads are perfect for an enterprise cloud. Those last 10% is the stuff that you just can't get rid of. That mainframe, AIX, that physical database server, physical security stack. Guess what? That's co-location too. And that can all work together. And then with multi-cloud tools, we can help you manage that 20% hyperscale where you can actually go get the benefits involved. The things like, I need to be able to scale my application up and down to meet the needs of my business. And if you want to learn more, you can go to expedient.com/services/assessments, and you can sign up for a free cloud assessment where we can help you find the right cloud for your workloads. And if you go to expedient.com/services/multi-cloud, you can learn about our multi-cloud tooling. And on our website, expedient.com, you can learn about all of the services that we offer, from our Expedient, our enterprise workspace, to our security tooling, to our multi-cloud tools, our enterprise cloud, our DRaaS, our backups as a service. We just released Office 365 backups. So much is happening, and we're pushing forward to help our clients and you get to where you want to go. And with that, I will open it up for questions. I see some questions sitting out here. So what is the most important takeaway for today? The takeaway is that the way that you think about cloud needs to change. And you need to focus on the order of operations and how you're going about doing that. Lifting and shifting and then to a hyperscale cloud and then figuring out how to optimize is a great way to spend a lot of money to do the same things you were doing before and potentially get stuck doing that. We want to help you get to your cloud goals, not necessarily the cloud. In here, I see there are many technical definitions of technical debt. When we talk about, besides documentation, no one does it. Yes, documentation is a really hard one. And the main reason it's a hard one is that it's a fairly boring and repetitive task. But I always appreciate my documentarian people, all of the people who spend the time to write out good documentation that is worth its weight in gold. But technical debt are things like patching, right? Think about every Saturday night you spend doing patching. Every time there's a security vulnerability and you got to do the mad scramble to figure out, okay, when's the patch coming out? What workaround can we put in? All of that becomes technical debt. All of those operations that are just keeping the lights on, that forms technical debt. How much of the order of operations is based on the validity of assumptions about starting state for any given component? If so, shouldn't that be subject to static analysis? And I'm guessing there's also a need for dynamic analysis. So when we take a look at the order of operations, we look at the actual goal and end state that you want to get to. And a lot of organizations don't really care that they land in AWS or Azure or GCP unless there's a specific service that they're aiming for. And they care more about, I want flexibility in my spending. I want the ability to grow when I need to. I want the ability to support my business as quickly as possible so that I don't have to say, well, we're waiting on the supply chain. They don't want to do that anymore. And so looking at the order of operations means you need to understand where you sit today, an inventory of your workloads, an inventory of your platforms, and understand what is inside of those and where can they go. Is your accounting system needing to go into a cloud native workload? No. You're not going to push updates every day to your accounting platform. In fact, you probably shouldn't, and the people who work in your accounting department would hate you for doing so. You're not going to push updates every day to your accounting system. That's fairly static. You're going to push in, rule changes and tax code changes and those sorts of things, but that's not I have to upgrade the entire app. That's config files, right? So those challenges are very different. So think about it from a static analysis of here's where we are today and here's where we want to be. And then evaluate those changes as you go. Hey, this application we thought would be a really great fit for cloud actually isn't a great fit for cloud, and make changes as you go. But this is where the lift and optimize to an enterprise cloud comes into play. Can you please comment on whether cloud equals public cloud, private cloud, and or hybrid cloud? Yes. They're all clouds. Everything is a cloud, really. If you think about it, edge is a cloud. This is like a cloud that's real low to the ground. It's like fog. But cloud to me is an operating model. Right? It is a matter of you looking at the way that you operate in that environment. How do you actually handle spending? How do you handle growth? Can you do that in a self-service manner? These are the sorts of things that generally look at a cloud. So yes, private cloud can be an automation platform, and public cloud can be the AWS, Azure, GCPs of the world, and the hybrid cloud is a bit of both. These are the sorts of things that honestly, definition-wise, don't entirely matter. And you need to focus on what is the actual goal and what are the business outcomes that you're really looking to get to. Since you're proposing to rethink refactoring apps going before moving to the cloud, break modernization operation first, what is your perspective on what AWS will think, since they're very much focused on the 6R methodology on how you make money from cloud? Sorry for the long question, LOL. AWS is actually moving into this space now. Outposts is a big reason for this, right? They are looking at every single possible way to eliminate every single barrier to get you to migrate into their platform. They just released their mainframe modernization platform in November. They've been pushing Outposts for almost 3 years now. They want you to be on their platform regardless of where it is. And so for them, they would like you to move in. This is why all the lift and shift things and all of their migration tools, this is why they bought, Cloud Endure? Not Cloudspin, Cloud Endure. This is why they buy all these tools. And that's great. And we want to help our clients get to AWS when it's appropriate for them to do so. When we see that this is a good workload for them, when we do our assessments, we look at workloads and say, yeah, this is great for AWS. You should go do that. But here's these other 10 applications. These are probably not great ideas, and this is what you should be doing with them. So we're not really concerned around, AWS and how they make money from cloud. They're going to make their money pretty much easily just by saying, hey, here's a way for you to go spend it, right? They're Amazon. But when we look at it, we want to figure out what is the best way to do it so that you don't find out in 3 months that, oh, hey, this application is doing a lot of network traffic and my egress fees are through the roof. Can an on-site private cloud be part of technical debt? Absolutely. Is it solving a problem for your business? Is it actually doing something for you? Are you spending more time keeping the lights on for it than you are getting value out of it? That can be technical debt. And finally, Office 365 backups. We can now back up Exchange and OneDrive onto our shared backup platform, our cloud data protection. We will have more about that soon. My producer, Liz, is currently nodding her head deeply. But we are working on things to improve our backup platform so that we can do even more with that. And by the way, with that, I'm going to wrap up for today. I want to thank you all for joining me today on this beautiful sunny day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you soon. Thanks.